So we do have a way online at the Next Stage website to kind of pitch your story to see if we do that. And that's how this next story came. And I was really thrilled when I found out that it was Cyndi, because I've known Cyndi on and off for years, a long time. And she works with the community. She raises money. She's a great community partner and just a great person. And she's like, I've got a love story to end all love stories. Keep in mind.
I did not say that.
She did. Honestly. Believe me, I have the microphone.
He exaggerates. I don't know.
But she does have she does have her love story. So let's a big round of applause. Let's get Cyndi Fitzgerald up here onto the stage.
My name is Cyndi, and I'm going to tell you a story that I just titled tonight, Never Say Never. And the elevator version of my story goes like this. One night, Jude came over, and he never left. And that is a true story. I could just end it right there. But I think it's a better story if I fill in a couple of the details. And my story begins where many do, with family. My family are European immigrants who settled farmland in Oklahoma and then migrated to California when the farmland fell fallow during the Dust Bowl. And poor folks who work the land tend toward large families. So the clan of Okies that I am from did not buck this trend. My family loves babies and weddings. I have 13 aunts and uncles. And they gave me station wagons full of cousins who grew up and got married and made more cousins. And my family's big on babies and weddings. What we're not so good at is actually staying married. I'd see that more of my cousins are divorced than not. And just between my mom and my dad and my two sisters, there are 11 marriages and divorces. So growing up, I really didn't see marriage as an excellent model for a long-lasting relationship. And when I left Clovis to go to college in San Francisco, I was full of nevers. You know the ones I mean, right? Those promises that we make to our future selves when we are full of arrogant youth and we are confident we know everything, right? I am never going to compromise. I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to have a kid. Never this, never that. Never mind. So after college, I worked for a grassroots peace and social justice organization called California Peace Action. We're pretty big out there. And our home office is in San Francisco, but we had field offices that ran canvases in Santa Barbara and Santa Cruz and LA. And I was the major donor officer, and I was also the state women's caucus representative. So I was on the road a lot. I was meeting with major donors, fancy rich people in the hills above Santa Barbara. I was writing ads and recruiting and training women to come work at this awesome organization. And sometimes I was gone a long time. And I honestly can picture in my mind the first moment I saw Jude. It was at the daily briefing in the San Francisco office. I was home after being on the road for over a month, probably close to 2 months. I was on the road because it was a summertime and major recruitment. All those cute college students going to save the world and make it a better place. And so I'd been gone a long time. And every day we start our day, I'm so nervous. Wait, I'm just going to pause. We're just going to pause and say this. Thank you. It's just his story, and it's a good story, Cyndi. All right, so it's a canvas office. It's in San Francisco. We start every day with a briefing. That's what canvas offices do. And you talk about the politics. You talk about the voting record of the precincts that you're going into. Does the rep need to co-sponsor a piece of legislation? Are we looking for volunteers? We're always raising money, right? And door-to-door canvassing is a really hard job. I don't know how many of you have ever done it as a job or even volunteered to canvass during an election cycle, but it's a hard job, so there's a lot of turnover. And so every briefing starts with one of those get to know you in a sentence kind of icebreakers, right? Hi, I'm Cyndi, and I just got back from the road. I've worked here for 3 years, and my favorite movie is The Princess Bride, right? So I'm scanning the room, looking for fresh faces, and I see Jude in the corner, and he's wearing, I gotta get this right. He's wearing cut-off khakis just below the knee that are splattered with paint. Old, like ancient army boots with busted and re-knotted laces. He has long, curly, rusty brown hair and a goatee that matches. He's drinking espresso out of a wild turkey bottle. And when it comes his turn to share, he says, pass. And I thought he was beautiful and arrogant. But when it came time to actually discuss the issues, he knew the voting precinct, he knew the legislation that was going to be presented, he knew whether or not it had enough co-sponsors, he knew the demographics of Palo Alto versus Berkeley and how to tailor your rap to the area where you were going. And I was like, oh, okay. And I added smart to the list. And the crews hit the road, and I hit the desk, and because I had been gone for a while, it was my turn to close the office, which meant I waited for the crews to come back. I debriefed them. I locked up the money they raised safely. I locked up the office. And when I was debriefing Jude that night, he really surprised me. He was still a trainee at the time, and our nightly quota was $80, which back then was a lot to raise, and he had like doubled that. I mean, it was just crazy. So I added persuasive to the list. And then I closed up the office, and I laced up my skates, and I rolled on home. And I did say skates. That was my preferred mode of travel at the time, because I don't know how many of you ever lived in San Francisco or New York and had a car, but once you've got a good parking spot by your apartment, you kind of don't move it until it's cleaning day. Then you just move it to the other side of the street. So I used to roller skate to and from work. And I was roller skating home down Church Street, and Jude was walking up 15th Street. And that's where we ran into each other, at the corner of 15th and Church Streets in San Francisco, where the Castro meets the Mission. And it was a really beautiful, beautiful summer night. And there's just something about the way he smiled at me, and my heart just like, oh, and I kind of lost my breath for a moment. And I added sexy to the list. And I asked him if he would like to grab a beer. Actually, what I did was I asked him if he would mind going into the corner bodega and getting a 6-pack and some nacho cheese chips for me so I didn't have to take my skates off. And then I offered him a beer as a thank you, and he said yes. And conveniently, my apartment was right across the street. So we hauled up 3 flights of stairs, and we sat around my living room making the kind of small talk that you make, when you're getting to know a person. But the talk just didn't stay small for very long. Pretty soon, he was telling me about growing up in Vermont and his parents' old farmhouse in Bennington, surrounded by his mama's gardens, and how he loves the mountains and he loves the seasons. And I was telling him about growing up in Clovis and my grandpa's cotton fields, and romping around the Sierra Nevada foothills, playing in rivers and climbing rocks, and how if he really wanted to see mountains, he needed to go see Yosemite. And we looked, I'm not kidding, I think we looked at every single photo album I had all the way through. And we drank all the beer. And before we knew it, the birds outside were letting us know that morning would soon be here, and he hadn't even tried to kiss me. And I added sweet to the list. And that day, I had a really crappy errand to run. That day, I was destined for 4th and Bryant Street. And if you've ever lived in San Francisco, you know that the only thing that is at 4th and Bryant Street is the Hall of Justice, the home of the city and county jail, and the clerks to whom I had to return money in order to bail my car out. Because even though I had this fantastic plan about skating to and from places, I still occasionally used my car, and I had managed to rack up enough unpaid parking tickets that my car had been towed. So I had to walk a long way. And Jude said, I'll walk with you. And it was going to be a long wait and a really boring filting. And he said, I'll wait with you. And I added kind to the list. And I stood in line, and then we paid my fine, but I couldn't get my car back to the next day. And it's timing, whatever. I don't even remember why. But that's okay, because on our way back to the mission, we passed this kind of abandoned construction lot. The chain link fence was kind of buckling. It was covered in this vine I had never seen before. The flower looked fake. It looked like it was made of plastic. I had to touch it. And I had never seen it, so I asked Jude, do you know what this is? I don't know what this is. He said, oh, as a matter of fact, I do. That is called the kissing flower. And if you happen to be walking by the kissing flower, and you happen to be walking with someone that you would like to kiss, and it happens to be blooming, you should kiss them. So I added clever to the list, and we had our first kiss. And you know that scene in The Princess Bride when Buttercup kisses the farm boy for the first time? It felt like that. But it was time to go back to work. So we went to work, and at the end of work that night, I said, hey, Jude, you want to come over? And he said, sure. And the next night, I said, hey, Jude, you want to come over again? And he's like, yeah. And the next night, and before you know it, it was like a couple of weeks had gone by, and he hadn't even called his roommate. This is pre-cell phone days, right? He hadn't even called his room, and he's like, I didn't even know if I'm alive. You know, hey, dude, I'm fine. I just met this chick roller skating down the street, and we haven't stopped talking yet. Whatever he just didn't touch base at all. So when he finally did connect with Mark, we found out he was being evicted. So we moved in. And we kept talking. And I found out that he can make a delicious meal even when the cupboard is bare. And he found out I like to sing in the shower really loud. And it started feeling like something really important, something big, right? So I felt like I needed to tell him about my nevers. And I said, I can see myself in a lifelong relationship, a committed relationship with you, but I will never get married. It's a construct of the patriarchy, blah, blah, blah. And I said, and I can see myself being a mama, but there's so many babies that don't have families. It almost seems selfish just to do it just because I can. And I'm never going to stop advocating for things that I think are right and just. I'm kind of a highly opinionated human being, and I'm going to be like that. And he said, I like you just the way you are. And so we kissed. And he's been with me ever since. And I've added a few more adjectives to the list. I've added thoughtful and reliable and insightful and stubborn. And it turns out that never isn't always forever, because I did have a baby. And my son is an amazing human being. And it's perhaps one of the best things that I've ever done. And I did marry him in his mama's backyard by that farmhouse in Bennington, surrounded by her gardens. And I did compromise, because that's what makes relationships work. But there's one never that I still treasure. That night that Jude came over and never left. Thank you.